Korean gentleman, Admiral Iannuzzi. Famous for his unbeaten record throughout the Japanese invasions of Korea, Imjin War, his creative employment of the turtle ship, and his strategic acumen that assisted in driving the invaders out, Admiral Iannuzzi, 1545 to 1598, was a legendary Korean naval leader. Known for his bravery, devotion, and naval warfare prowess, he is still regarded as one of Korea's most cherished national heroes. He achieved 23 victories against the Japanese Navy, never losing a battle under his command. In addition to using creative strategies like the crane wing formation to fight larger Japanese fleets, Iannuzzi is recognized for having revived and improved the turtle ship, an armored vessel equipped with cannons and spikes to thwart boarding. Iannuzzi is still regarded as one of Korea's most revered leaders and a source of inspiration and pride for the country. Generations of military leaders, especially those in Japan, were influenced by his strategic skill and application of naval inventions, which had a profound and enduring effect on Asian naval combat.
Anglo-Belgian gentleman, Sir Adrian Carton de Wiart. Anglo-Belgian military soldier Sir Adrian Carton de Wiart was dubbed the Unkillable Soldier due to his remarkable fortitude and several wounds from his 6 decades of duty, which included the Boer War, World War I, during which he was awarded the Victoria Cross, and World War II. Despite escaping from a prisoner of war camp, surviving plane crashes, and losing an eye and a hand, he was a decorated military hero who loved fighting and remained a British envoy in China after the war. At the age of 19, he joined the British Army for the Boer War without telling his father because he was fascinated by the prospect of going to war. After being shot in the leg and groin and sent home, he eventually returned to serve in South Africa, where a ricocheted shot and a bullet caused him to lose his left eye and an ear. He tunneled out of a prisoner of war camp at the age of 62 with one arm and made at least 5 attempts to get out before being allowed to go. After the war, he was appointed a British representative in China by Winston Churchill.
American gentleman, Audie Murphy. Audie Murphy was the most decorated American soldier in World War II, known for his bravery in combat and earning every military award for valor available from the U.S. Army, including the Medal of Honor. After the war, his heroic status launched a successful career in Hollywood, where he starred in films such as The Hell and Back, based on his wartime memoir. Despite his fame, he struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and later became a public advocate for veterans with similar unseen wounds of war. Murphy received promotions for his fast thinking and shooting prowess while serving in multiple wars in North Africa, Sicily, and France. He was famous for encouraging his fellow soldiers in the face of fire, assaulting a machine gun nest, and destroying a German tank by himself. His extraordinary valor earned him the Congressional Medal of Honor, as well as numerous other U.S., French, and Belgian decorations. Indian-Canadian gentleman, Baba Gurdit Singh. Singh was born in 1860 at Sarhali, in the Amritsar district of the Punjab province in British India. In 1914, he chartered a Japanese ship, the Kamagata Maru, to go to Canada, reaching Vancouver on May 23, 1914. The government did not allow the ship to anchor, and the ship was attacked by the police at night. The attack was repulsed by the passengers, and it created a great stir among Indians in Canada. His aim was to challenge Canada's discriminatory immigration policies, specifically the continuous journey regulation. Despite being denied entry, the incident became a powerful symbol of Asian exclusion in Canada. The Canadian immigration authorities allowed only 22 of them to disembark. However, the others did not fulfill the requirements of continuous journey under Canadian law. Baba Gurdit Singh was an important figure in the Canadian government, allowing immigrants from India to seek a better life in Canada. Filipino-Canadian gentleman Benson Flores. Benson Flores, who came to British Columbia in 1861 and is regarded as the first Filipino immigrant to Canada, is thought to be the first Filipino-Canadian gentleman ever recorded. He was a skilled sailor who fished and transported people, two vital services to the people of Bowen Island. Flores ran Snug Cove's first boat rental, according to the Bowen Island Museum and Archives. They called him Old Ben. Filipino-Canadian gentleman Bert Cacero. Bert Cacero was the first Filipino engineer in Alberta, contributed to the oil industry with his knowledge of drilling, technology of finding reserves, and the economics of producing wells. He has held executive positions with Husky Oil, Dome Petroleum, Amaco, and Bow Canada. His expertise includes the valuation of oil and gas assets, in-depth knowledge of Canada's petroleum reserves, and secondary and tertiary recovery methodologies on heavy oil. He was in charge of drilling exploration wells, where significant oil sands reserves were discovered, and actually holds titles for some oil wells for his work, and was a certified life member of the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Alberta. He won numerous awards in the oil industry. Filipino-Canadian gentleman Conrad Santos. Conrad Santos was the first Canadian of Filipino origin to be elected to a legislative assembly in Canada. He was a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba from 1981 to 1988, and again from 1990 to 2007. As a New Democrat in the Northwest Winnipeg constituency of boroughs, Santos defeated Ben Hanishak, an NDP-turned progressive member of the Legislative Assembly, MLA, to win his first seat in the Manitoba legislature in the 1981 provincial election. In the 1986 election, he was elected again. Originally from the Philippines, he attended Harvard University before relocating to Winnipeg to pursue a career in politics and education. Conrad Santos demonstrated that any immigrant who aspires to a better life may succeed. Italian-Canadian gentleman Dan Iannuzzi. Canadian broadcaster, journalist, and businessman Daniel Andrea Iannuzzi. Iannuzzi was born in Montreal and is a third-generation Italian-Canadian. He joined the Canadian Grenadier Guards at the age of 18, and 2 years later, in 1954, he relocated to Toronto. On June 2nd, 1954, Republic Day, he and Arturo Scotti created the Italian-Canadian newspaper Corriere Canadese, a daily periodical catering to the Italian-Canadian population. Only in Ontario and Quebec is the publication distributed. From 1972 to 1979, he produced multilingual TV shows for Citted in Toronto. In 1979, he established CFMT-TV, now Omni One, the first multilingual television station in the world, which first aired in 24 languages. Dan Iannuzzi was the station's president and executive producer for a decade. He received the League of Human Rights 1977 Canadian Family Man Award. He became a member of the Order of Ontario in 1989. As a pioneer in multicultural communications and a substantial contributor to Toronto's Italian community, he was inducted into the Order of Canada in 1990.
Gentleman fencers Domenico Angelo. Domenico was an Italian fencing and sword expert who rose to prominence as a swordsman in mid-18th century England. In addition to his exceptional swordplay abilities, he gained notoriety for his renowned fencing school in London's Soho Square. The Angelo family of fencers was founded by him as well. As the first to emphasize fencing as a means of building health, poise, and grace, he has received accolades. His wisdom and impact led to fencing's transformation from a military art to a sport. After gaining the support of the Dowager Princess of Wales, who nominated him as the riding and fencing instructor for George, Prince of Wales, and his brother Edward, Duke of York in 1758, Angelo was made a fencing master of the British royal family. According to fencing instructor Nick Evangelista, the Angelo family was a lineage of fencing masters who controlled Europe's fencing landscape for well over 100 years. His legacy is cemented in the drama Tremomondo, the Angel of Fencing, which was performed at the Teatro Carlo Goldoni in Leghorn, the hometown of Domenico Angelo.
Gentleman fashion icon, Giorgio Armani. On July 11, 1934, Giorgio Armani was born in Piacenza, a town in northern Italy. During World War II, he lived in squalor and suffered severe burns after playing with an unexploded artillery shell. After 2 years in the military, Armani joined Milan's La Renaissance department store in 1957 as a sales clerk and window dresser. He co-founded his own company in 1975, and its unstructured, disassembled coats transformed clothing. Armani's style, which is distinguished by modern, austere, and elegant designs, revolutionized both masculine and feminine elegance and solidified his reputation as a fashion icon, especially for his groundbreaking contributions to red carpet attire. The liningless sports jacket, a soft, unstructured design that defied conventional menswear and came to represent casual elegance, was his most notable invention. A timeless style that struck a balance between glitz and restraint, his work was distinguished by a minimalist, deconstructed look that was modern, somber, and refined. He was acknowledged as the most prosperous Italian designer by 2001, having established a sizable fashion business that had spread into high-end products and hotels. Italian-Canadian gentleman, Herb Capozzi. Herb was an athlete, businessman, professional sports team manager, and political figure in British Columbia. Son of Pasquale Cap Capozzi, an Italian immigrant. Capozzi won a sports scholarship to the University of British Columbia, where he received BA and BCom degrees. Capozzi played with the Calgary Stampeders and Montreal Alouettes of the Canadian Football League. As a racquetball player, he won the Canadian Masters Championship in 1974 and the Canadian Golden Masters Championship in 1981. He represented Vancouver Centre in the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia from 1966 to 1972 as a social credit member. He ran unsuccessfully for the legislature in the 1963, 1972, and 1975 provincial elections. He was a member of the BC Sports Hall of Fame and the Canadian Soccer Hall of Fame and had received the Order of British Columbia in 2008. Capozzi was a director responsible for food, entertainment, and housing for Expo 86. He was a co-founder of the Keg restaurant chain with George Tidball and was instrumental in bringing McDonald's restaurants to Canada. History of Sunnybrook Hospital, Canadian Military Hospital. Sunnybrook Hospital was founded in 1948 as a military hospital to care for returning soldiers, sailors, and airmen from World War II. It was established on land that was once a farm, with an initial focus on providing comprehensive care to veterans, and now serves as Canada's largest veterans care facility. The hospital's Bayview campus was built as a direct response to the need for specialized care for war veterans. After World War II, Canada faced a significant influx of wounded and disabled veterans, creating a pressing need for a grand, state-of-the-art hospital. The hospital's core mission from its inception was to serve veterans, making it Canada's largest veterans care facility today. The hospital's wings were named to honor military units involved in the war, such as Ypres, or tona, and fillets for the Royal Canadian Army, Atlantic for the Royal Canadian Navy, and Lancaster and Spitfire for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Canadian gentleman, Homer Watson. Homer Watson was a prominent Canadian landscape painter known as the Canadian Constable by Oscar Wilde for his deep connection to the natural beauty of the Grand River Valley. He was a pioneering member of the Royal Canadian Academy and the Canadian Art Club, achieving significant international recognition and selling paintings to collectors like Queen Victoria. Watson's work, characterized by a profound respect for nature, celebrated the hardy spirit of Canadian pioneers and explored themes of humanity's relationship with the environment. Watson was deeply rooted in his home in Doon, Ontario. His paintings often featured the hard-working spirit of Canadian pioneers and their relationship with the landscape, reflecting a deep respect for their resilience. He was one of Canada's most successful artists in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, influencing the development of Canadian landscape painting.
Italian-Canadian gentleman, Huberto Badanai.
Born Huberto Badanai, was a Canadian automobile dealer and politician. He was the first Italian-born member of Canadian federal parliament. Born to an Italian mother and a Jewish-Italian father in Azzano d'Asimo, Friuli Venezia Giulia, northeastern Italy. At the age of 18, he relocated to Canada and found employment at a Rosslyn brickyard. After that, he started a profitable auto company and served as mayor for 8 years and an alderman for 9 years in Fort William, Ontario. In the federal election of 1958, he was elected to the House of Commons of Canada for the Fort William riding.
Irish-Canadian gentleman, Hugh Ryan. The Honorable Hugh Ryan was an Irish-Canadian railroad tycoon, businessman, banker, and philanthropist who lived from July 1832 to February 13, 1899. As part of the first wave of Irish Catholic immigration, his family left Limerick, Ireland, in 1841 and moved to Montreal, Canada. Canada's wealthiest and greatest railroad contractor was the moniker given to him. Hugh Ryan and his younger brother John Ryan founded the firm of H&J Ryan after relocating to Perth, Ontario in the 1850s. They were successful in winning the proposal to construct 2 sections of the Brockville and Ottawa Railway. The company moved to the U.S. in the early 1860s and secured a number of profitable contracts on railroads in Michigan, Maine, Kentucky, and Illinois, including the Chicago and Alton Railway. Due to a lack of domestic railway contractors brought on by the American Civil War, H&J Ryan's expansion from Canada into the United States allowed the company to monopolize contracts. Hugh Ryan was known as the model millionaire in Ontario's Catholic community, of which he was an active and well-known member for his charitable endeavors. Ryan left $8,000 or million in 2024, an endowment from his estate to Catholic charities in Toronto, such as the Hospital for Sick Children, Convent of the Precious Blood, St. Michael's Hospital, House of Providence, Sunnyside Orphanage, the Society of St. Vincent Delaware Paul, Toronto General Hospital, Toronto House of Industry, and Toronto Rehabilitation Institute. Canadian gentleman, Sir James Douglas. Sir James Douglas, born in British Guiana in 1803, was a significant figure in Canadian history as the first governor of British Columbia and governor of Vancouver Island. He was of mixed Scottish and African Creole from Barbados descent, making him a notable example of a black man in a position of political power during the colonial era. During the 1858 Fraser River Gold Rush, Douglas played a key role in asserting British sovereignty establishing law and order and managing the influx of gold seekers. Douglas' governorship was marked by his efforts to promote settlement, encourage a diverse population, and establish the foundations of British Columbia's political and social institutions. He retired in 1864 and was knighted. Italian-Canadian gentleman James Franceschini. Vincenzo James Franceschini was an Italian immigrant who came to Canada in 1905 and built a construction and horse breeding empire, founding Dufferin Construction and Dufferin Stock Farm. Franceschini arrived in Toronto in 1905 at the age of 15 from Pescara, Italy, with no money but a strong work ethic. He started as a manual laborer, eventually forming his own construction company, Dufferin Construction, which grew to become a major road contractor in Canada. He also established a successful horse breeding farm, Dufferin Stock Farm, becoming a top breeder of Hackney show horses. In 1940, after Italy declared war on Canada, he was arrested, fingerprinted, and sent to an internment camp as an enemy alien, despite his efforts to support the Allied cause. After a year in the camp, he was released after investigations proved his innocence. After his release, Dufferin Construction continued to flourish, securing significant government contracts, including for the Alaska Highway. Franceschini remained a respected member of the Italian community and continued his passion for Hackney horses.
Scottish gentleman John Hannah. John Hannah was a Scottish airman and a recipient of the Victoria Cross, the highest award for gallantry in the face of the enemy that can be awarded to British and Commonwealth forces. Sergeant Hannah was the wireless operator and air gunner aboard the Handley Page Hampton bomber, number P-1355, which was hit by heavy anti-aircraft fire on September 15, 1940, above Antwerp, Belgium, following a successful strike on German barges. The fire swiftly spread. Sergeant Hannah could have done the same as the navigator and rear gunner who had to evacuate, but instead he stayed to put out the fire, first using 2 extinguishers and then his bare hands. Despite suffering severe injuries, he managed to extinguish the fire, and the pilot successfully returned the nearly destroyed aircraft. Flying Officer Claire Connor, the aircraft's Canadian pilot, suggested that Hannah be awarded the Victoria Cross. Connor received the Distinguished Flying Cross himself. Hannah and Connor received the awards from King George VI during an investiture held at Buckingham Palace. Hannah was the youngest recipient of the Medal for Aerial Operations and the youngest during the Second World War, having been 18 when he took part in his Victoria Cross action.
Chinese-Canadian gentleman Hugh Yip. Hugh Yip was community leader in Toronto's First Chinatown, the first Canadian lawyer of Chinese descent, and played a critical role in helping repeal the Canadian-Chinese Exclusion Act in 1947. Yip, working closely with civil liberties and human rights lawyer and law school friend Irving Himmel and other activists from across the country, was an important player in convincing the government of Canada to, in 1947, repeal the Chinese Immigration Act of 1923, commonly known as the Chinese Exclusion Act, thereby allowing immigration of Chinese people into Canada. He maintained a private legal practice in Chinatown where he flourished due to his fluency in 3 Chinese languages, the fact he was the only Chinese-speaking attorney in Toronto at the time, and because he was a man who gave personal care and attention to his clients. In addition to his 47 years assisting Chinese residents with their legal needs, for decades of that spent working out of storefront offices in Chinatown, Yip served 2 terms as a Toronto Board of Education trustee for Ward 6 in the 1970s. Korean gentleman Kim Koo. Kim Goo, often spelled Kim Koo, was a key Korean independence leader, statesman, and educator who served as the last president of the Korean Provisional Government in exile. He led numerous resistance groups, co-founded the Korean Provisional Government in China, and fought Japanese colonial oppression for decades. After World War II, Kim Gu vehemently supported a united, independent Korea. However, a South Korean army officer assassinated him in 1949, which is considered a significant setback to national unification. Kim Gu is remembered as a national hero and a key figure in the Korean independence movement, whose life was devoted to the creation of a unified and independent Korean nation. Korean gentleman, King Sejong the Great. Considered by many to be Korea's greatest ruler for creating Hangul, the Korean alphabet, and cultivating a cultural golden period, King Sejong the Great, R. 1418 to 1450, was the fourth monarch of the Joseon dynasty. In addition to enacting laws to enhance the well-being of his people and encouraging literature and education, he was a distinguished scholar and patron of the arts and sciences who encouraged developments in technology, astronomy, and music. Sejong put programs into place to help his people live better lives, like creating agricultural surplus and helping farming households. Every year, Hangul Day, a Korean national holiday, honors the establishment of Hangul. One of the most inventive and talented kings in Asian history, he is regarded as a popular folk figure.
Canadian gentleman, Leo Major. Leo Major was a decorated French-Canadian soldier, renowned for his incredible bravery and accomplishments in both World War II and the Korean War. He is famous for liberating the Dutch city of Zwolle almost single-handedly during WW2, an act for which the city later gave him honorary citizenship, and for taking and defending the strategically vital Hill 355 during the Korean War. In two separate conflicts, Major is the only Canadian soldier to have been awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal, DCM, twice. Major had to wear an eye patch when he lost his left eye to a phosphorus grenade during his first battles with German forces in Normandy. While recuperating from his wounds, Major offered to go on a reconnaissance mission in April 1945 to inspect Zwolle in advance of an Allied assault. In order to free the city without a significant Allied attack, he chose to clear it himself by apprehending German soldiers in groups and ultimately compelling an entire company to surrender. In 1951, during the Korean War, Major was part of an operation to retake the strategic Little Gibraltar, or Hill 355. With a small group of scouts, he launched a daring nighttime raid, surprising Chinese forces behind their own lines and reclaiming the hill. The people of Zwolle never forgot his heroic act, and in 1970, they held a ceremony celebrating their liberation. Major became an honorary citizen of Zwolle in 2005.
Italian-Canadian gentleman, Leone Caetani. Leone Caetani, an Italian nobleman and scholar, moved his family to Vernon, British Columbia, in 1921 to escape the rise of fascism in Italy. He established a life in the Canadian wilderness, but lost most of his family's wealth in the 1929 stock market crash. After his death in 1935, his wife and daughter lived in seclusion for 25 years, with the story culminating in the cultural legacy of the Caetani Cultural Center and the artwork of their daughter, Sviva Caetani. The family and their friend, Inger Marie Jewell, landed in Vernon, British Columbia, in August 1921. After hunting in British Columbia, Leone Caetani became enthralled with the country's scenery and aimed to rusticate, or live a simpler life there. He will always be appreciative that Canada gave him and his family safe passage and a second start at life. Their old residence, the Caetani House, was given to the city of Vernon and is now the Caetani Cultural Center, where their history, relics, and Sviva's well-known artwork are preserved. Italian-Canadian gentleman, Lino Magagna. He was an influential figure who founded the National Congress for Italian Canadians in 1974, a key organization that supported the community and advocated for Italian Canadian interests. He was the second of 4 sons to parents Giuseppe Magagna and Mary Bertaldi. He grew up in the northern mountains of Italy and was 6 years old when World War II began. Upon arriving in Canada, he spoke no English and brought only a suitcase filled with only a change of clothes. From Halifax, he took an antiquated passenger train, outfitted only with wooden benches for seats, and began his journey to Vancouver. With very little English and an incomplete education, he was limited to manual labor professions. He committed education and began taking English-speaking class lessons. Within the year, his English was so impressive that native speakers could not even detect an accent in his words. He pursued higher education and completed a master's and doctorate degree. While working in Toronto, he came across COSTI, Centro Organizzativo Scuole Tecniche Italiane, a new nonprofit with goals of helping new Italian immigrants to learn English and trades to ensure success in Canada. He was immediately interested. COSTI credits him as an incredibly influential leader, having been the driving force that gave the agency a strong administrative foundation, as well as setting up the IAS, Italian Immigrant Aid Society, merger before his retirement from the role in 1979. For his extensive contributions to the Italian-Canadian community through COSTI, as well as the National Congress for Italian Canadians, which he founded in 1974, Lino Magagna was awarded the Member of the Order of Canada Medal on May 6, 1988. Italian-Canadian gentleman, Emanuele Lino Saputo. Emanuele Lino Saputo is a well-known entrepreneur and philanthropist who founded the Saputo Dairy Firm. He founded Saputo Incorporated in 1954 after moving to Canada with his family in the early 1950s after being born in Italy in 1937. Lino Saputo was born in Montalembert, Italy, and immigrated to Montreal, Canada, after World War II with his father and brother. Lino convinced his father, expert cheesemaker Giuseppe Saputo, to launch a dairy and cheese company that would eventually become Saputo, Incorporated in 1954 with just 00 and a bicycle. Starting with simple machinery, the business grew rapidly, constructing its first manufacturing plant in 1957 and rising to the top of the Canadian mozzarella market in the 1980s. Under his direction, Saputo Incorporated grew to include operations in Australia, Argentina, and the United States. Today, its goods are sold in over 60 nations. He is also well known for his charitable endeavors, which include helping to establish the Amelia and Lino Saputo Foundation to aid underprivileged areas of Montreal. He has received accolades like Member of the Order of Canada and Member of the Order de Montreal in appreciation of his services to the dairy sector and business. Canadian gentleman athletes, Louis Cyr. Louis Cyr was a famous Quebec-born strongman from Canada, celebrated as the strongest man in the world in the late 19th century. He won the North American Championship in 1885 and the World Championship in 1892. In 1895, he set a record by lifting a platform holding 18 men, weighing 1,967 kilograms for 1,337 pounds. Ben Weider, the former head of the International Fitness and Bodybuilding Federation, said in 2000 that Cyr is the strongest man in history based on his documented accomplishments, which include backlifting 4,337 pounds, 1,967 kilograms, and lifting 500 pounds with one finger. On December 1st, 1891, at Zomer Park in Montreal, before some 10,000 people, Sejong resisted the pull of 4 draft horses, 2 on each side, despite grooms cracking their whips to encourage the horses to pull harder and strain their haunches. Monument to Louis Cyr by Robert Pelletier in place de Ham's Forts in Montreal. Italian-Canadian gentleman Lucio Agostini. Lucio was an Italian-born composer, arranger, and conductor who established his career in Canada. Agostini began playing cello with the Montreal Symphony Orchestra at the age of 16. He also played clarinet and saxophone in a nightclub band on the side. He wrote film music for the Associated Screen News of Canada newsreels from 1932 to 1943. He started working for the Canadian Radio Broadcasting Commission as a conductor in 1934. After relocating to Toronto in 1943, he composed and conducted incidental music for CBC radio and television drama series and variety shows. He also served as conductor and arranger for the popular weekly series Front Page Challenge for more than 20 years. At the 12th ACTRA Awards in 1983, Agostini received the John Draney Award in honor of his services to Canadian broadcasting. Italian-Canadian gentlemen, the Mascioli brothers. Leo and Antonio, Tony, Mascioli were well-known Italian-Canadian businessmen and civic leaders in Timmins, Ontario. They had a construction company, hotels, and movie theaters as part of their economic empire. Following Italy's declaration of war on Canada during World War II, they were among the 600 Italian Canadians detained as enemy aliens under the Defense of Canada regulations. Their families were greatly impacted by the incarceration as they attempted to continue living their lives and pay visits to their loved ones. In the end, the brothers were found not guilty of the accusations made against them. Their narrative sheds light on the anguish and suffering that Italian Canadians went through throughout the internment era. Tony assisted in the establishment of the community in the mining towns of northeastern Ontario, while Leo was one of the founders of the Timmins Empire Hotel. Indian-Canadian gentleman Niranjan Singh Grewal. Niranjan was a pioneer of the logging industry and British Columbia's first Indo-Canadian elected to public office. First arriving in BC in 1903, thousands of Indian men worked on the railways or in the sawmill industry, looking for better economic conditions than their home country. Niranjan Singh Grewal was a trailblazer in more ways than one. Passionate and visionary, his life story reads like a movie script. In 1925, he arrived in Canada at the age of 17 from the small village of Lidikhe, Punjab, finding work in the sawmill industry. By 1941, he had moved to Mission and was employed as a millwright at Fraser Mills. A hard worker and sharply intelligent, he rose quickly through the ranks and soon became a foreman in the company. He beat out several prominent mill owners at the land auction after the Japanese evacuation of 1942 to buy both the Kamamura Mill, Riverside Sawmills, and Mission Sawmills. Moreover, he went on to own 6 more companies in the logging industry. Believing that democratic privileges also carry obligations and duties, he began to sit on many charitable organizations and start a political career. Already a popular and well-respected man, he topped the polls, beating out 7 candidates in a historic victory, especially given that Indo-Canadians had only been given the right to vote 3 years before. Niranjan Singh Grewal was a trailblazer that proved anyone can make something out of themselves and live the Canadian dream. Filipino-Canadian gentleman Ray Pagdican. Ray Pagdican is the first Canadian of Filipino origin to become a member of Parliament. He was a cabinet minister in the governments of Jean Caetani and Paul Martin. Pagdican served as a member of Parliament from 1988 until his defeat in the 2004 election. Manila is where Reynaldo de Luz Pagdican was born. He was one of Victor N. Pagdican and Fabiana de Luz's 11 children. He was raised just outside of the Filipino capital in the town of Bacoor in the Cavite province. His father became a self-taught accountant. His mom was a second-hand products vendor. Ray was a standout student who went on to become a doctor in the United States before moving to Canada, where he began as a lecturer at the University of Manitoba's Faculty of Medicine in 1971 and rose to the rank of full professor of pediatrics and child health in 1985. Dr. Ray Pagdican was quite involved in local issues. He served on the Winnipeg Police Commission from 1983 to 1986 as a citizen. He was the national president of the United Council of Filipino-Canadian Associations in Canada at the time. In the federal elections of 1988, Dr. Ray Pagdican was elected to the House of Commons for the first time. In Winnipeg North, a constituency traditionally held by the New Democratic Party, he ran as a Liberal Party candidate. On February 23, 1996, MP Pagdican was named Parliamentary Secretary to Prime Minister Jean Caetani. He served in that capacity for 2 years. He served as the chair of the Standing Committees on Immigration and Citizenship, as well as on human rights and the status of people with disabilities. Canadian gentleman Richard Pierpoint. Pierpoint was enslaved for 20 years, and his story is representative of the resilience of the people of African descent who freed themselves from slavery in the American colonies by fighting for the British as a result becoming a war hero. Many enslaved African Americans were offered freedom in exchange for fighting for the British in 1776 when the American Revolutionary War broke out. Pierpoint was one of perhaps a dozen black soldiers serving with Butler's Rangers unit by at least 1780. The Rangers relocated to the Niagara area after the British defeat. The petition of Free Negroes, which Pierpont signed and sent to Lieutenant Governor John Graves Simcoe in 1794, asked that free black soldiers be granted land grants next to one another so that the former comrades could assist one another in clearing land. Pierpoint legacy lives on with memorials in the Niagara region, including Pierpoint Park, Captain Pierpoint Park, and Richard Pierpoint Memorial Gardens. Chinese-Canadian gentleman, Ron Bick Lee. Ron Bick Lee was a prominent Chinese-Canadian entrepreneur and community leader. He was known for his business ventures, including Grandview Greenhouses and Fu Hong, and his involvement in various community organizations. He was actively involved in the Chinese-Canadian community, serving as chairman of the Vancouver Chinese Public School and participating in organizations like the Chinese Merchants Association, Toy San Benevolent Society, and Chinese Social Development Society. He arrived in Canada in 1911 and faced the challenges of the head tax and immigration restrictions that limited the entry of his wife for many years. Despite these obstacles, he persevered and became a respected member of the community. Ron Bick Lee's story is part of the larger narrative of the Chinese-Canadian experience, highlighting both the challenges and successes of early immigrants.
Canadian gentleman Ron Joyce. Ron Joyce was a Canadian entrepreneur known for transforming Tim Hortons from a single shop into a global icon, and for his philanthropic efforts through the Tim Hortons Children's Foundation and the Joyce Family Foundation. Starting from a modest background in Nova Scotia, he worked as a police officer before partnering with Tim Horton in 1964 to build the famous coffee and donut chain, which he eventually sold to Wendy's International.
He moved to Hamilton at 15, served in the Royal Canadian Navy, and later joined the Hamilton Police Force in 1956. While on foot patrol, he befriended Tim Horton and eventually left the police force to become a partner in the burgeoning business, investing in the first shop in 1964. Joyce founded the Tim Hortons Children's Foundation in 1974 to send underprivileged children to camp and provide youth programs. He also established the Joyce Family Foundation to provide access to education for children facing financial challenges. Joyce received numerous accolades, including the Order of Canada, multiple honorary degrees, and induction into the Canadian Business Hall of Fame. He is remembered not only as a business titan, but also for his commitment to giving back to the community and his passion for supporting disadvantaged youth. Greek-Canadian gentleman, Sam Panopoulos. A Greek immigrant who arrived in Canada in 1954, he and his brothers operated several restaurants in Ontario. In 1962, he created the first Hawaiian pizza at his restaurant in Chatham, making him a famous figure for this culinary invention. Sotirios Panopoulos was born in Vervura, Greece, on August 20th, 1934. He emigrated to Canada in 1954, aged 20, arriving in Halifax, Nova Scotia. After sampling pizza in Naples, Panopoulos first tried pizza in North America when he visited Windsor, Ontario, and thought he could make improvements, which led to a successful business and cooking career. Canadian gentleman, Sir Arthur Currie. A national hero, Sir Arthur Currie led the Canadian Corps during the 100 Days Campaign and the Battle of Vimy Ridge. He was also a Canadian soldier and educator who played a significant role in Canada's triumph in World War I. From a pre-war gunner, he became the first Canadian commander of the Canadian Corps, the first and only Canadian to occupy this role. He was a military genius renowned for his tactical ingenuity and careful preparation. At the beginning of the war, he led one of Canada's first infantry brigades deployed abroad. He was in charge of the meticulous preparation and strategy that resulted in Canada's triumph at the 1917 Battle of Vimy Ridge. Large-scale Canadian successes were the outcome of his leadership, especially during the 100 Days Campaign. Currie was a brave and creative officer who used set-piece operations for his campaigns and modified his strategies for trench warfare. Currie is regarded as a key figure in Canadian history and one of the country's best generals. He was made a Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath and a Knight Grand Cross of the Order of St. Michael and St. George. Anglo-Irish Canadian gentleman, Sir Herbert Samuel Holt. Holt served as president of the Royal Bank of Canada from 1908 to 1934 and the bank's chairman from 1934 until his death. He was a co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton Montreal, a director of Montreal Trust Company, Canada Car and Foundry, and many other Canadian companies. Born in Ireland in 1855 and then emigrated to Canada in 1873, beginning work as an assistant engineer with the Toronto Waterworks. In the early 1880s, he was employed to survey and construct portions of the Canadian Pacific Railway across the prairies and through the Rocky Mountains under James Ross. He rose through the ranks in his career. Herbert Holt became a pioneer developer of the energy business in the province of Quebec and owned the Montreal Gas Company. with assets worth over $0 million. He served as president of the Royal Bank of Canada, Montreal Light, Heat and Power, and as a director of almost 250 businesses globally. The Montreal Gazette called him the richest man in Canada at the time of his death. King George V knighted him in 1915. Following its establishment in 1979, he was elected to the Canadian Business Hall of Fame in recognition of his noteworthy contributions to the Canadian economy. French-Canadian gentleman, Sir Wilfrid Laurier. The first French-Canadian to hold the position was Sir Wilfrid Laurier, a politician and statesman from Canada who led the country as its 7th Prime Minister from 1896 until 1911. Throughout his more than 45-year political career, which was marked by his captivating personality, he headed the Liberal Party and promoted the development of a contemporary, unified Canada. Significant accomplishments during his tenure included the Railway Act's approval and the creation of the provinces of Saskatchewan and Alberta. He was a farmer's son born in St. Lin, Quebec, in 1841 and attended McGill University to study law. Known for his charm, charisma, and enthusiasm for united Canada, he is regarded as one of Canada's finest political leaders. Early Confederation was strengthened by his emphasis on compromise and reconciliation between English and French Canada. Canadian cultural icon, the history of Tim Hortons. Tim Horton, an NHL player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, opened the first Tim Hortons donut shop in Hamilton, Ontario, after an initial hamburger venture. The restaurant was originally known as Tim Horton Donuts. Soon after Horton opened the store, he met Ron Joyce, a former police constable in Hamilton. In 1965, Joyce took over the fledgling Tim Horton Donut Shop at 65 Ottawa Street North. By 1967, after opening 2 additional stores, the two became full partners. Upon Horton's death in 1974, Joyce bought out the Horton family shares for $1 million and took over as sole owner of the existing chain of 40 stores, quickly and aggressively expanding the chain in both geography and product selection. The 500 store opened in 1991. The ubiquity of Tim Hortons, through the wide expansion of its outlets, makes it a prominent feature of Canadian life. Canadians eat more donuts per capita and have more donut outlets per capita than any other nation. Tim Hortons' prevalence in the coffee and donut market has led to its branding as a Canadian cultural icon. Greek-Canadian gentleman, Tom Michaelopoulos. Anastasios Tom Michaelopoulos was a Greek-born Canadian entrepreneur, businessman, president, and founder of Coffee Time. He was also the president of Chairman's Brands, the parent company to 241 Pizza, Coffee Time, Egg Smart, New Orleans Pizza, and The Friendly Greek. Michaelopoulos immigrated to Canada from Greece and originally found employment as a real estate agent before he started Coffee Time, a chain of coffee shops. In 1982, along with business partner Young Chong, he purchased a coffee house named Bentley's Fine Donuts in Bolton, Ontario, and renamed the company to Coffee Time. He eventually franchised the company, at one point operated over 300 stores in Canada, and had franchises abroad in Greece, Qatar, and Afghanistan. Tom Michaelopoulos was also a philanthropist in the local Greek community in Toronto, creating Iannuzzi Media, which creates cultural programming in English so that it is accessible to all Canadians. Indian-Canadian gentleman, Victor Dalip Singh. Prince Victor Albert J. Dalip Singh, the first Sikh in Canada. In 1887, he entered the Royal Military College as part of the Special Cadetship. Later, Singh was commissioned as a lieutenant into the 1st Royal Dragoons and was sent to Halifax as an honorary aide-de-camp to General Sir John Ross. He was honored by the House of Punjab with the Sovereign Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the Propitious Star of Punjab and the Sovereign Knight Grand Cross of the Order of Ranjit Singh. He was also recognized with the United Kingdom, recipient of the King Edward VII Coronation Medal and recipient of the King George V Coronation Medal.
American gentleman Walter D. Ehlers. Walter D. Ehlers was a member of the U.S. Army who, for his efforts during World War II, was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest honor bestowed by the U.S. military. Ehlers was a squad leader and staff sergeant in the 18th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division by D-Day on June 6, 1944. While the initial wave of soldiers landed, his squad, which was part of the second wave of the invasion, waited offshore on an infantry landing craft. He spearheaded his unit's assault against German forces that day and destroyed multiple enemy machine gun positions by himself. The platoon was heavily fired at the following day. Despite his wounds, Ehlers was able to cover the platoon's evacuation, which included rushing back through enemy fire to collect his Browning automatic rifle and carrying a wounded automatic rifleman to safety. 5 months later, on December 11, 1944, he received the Medal of Honor for his services. In the office of Lieutenant General John C. H. Lee, Commanding General, Communications Zone, ETO, he received a decoration in Paris. Ehlers was promoted to second lieutenant on the battlefield by this point.
Canadian gentleman, William Hall. William Hall, a black Nova Scotian, was the first black person, first Nova Scotian, and third Canadian to receive the British Empire's highest award for bravery, the Victoria Cross. He earned the Victoria Cross for his heroic actions during the relief of Lucknow in 1857, part of the Indian Mutiny. Hall served as a captain of the foretop on HMS Shannon, and his bravery at a gun during the siege of the Shah Najib Mosque was instrumental in breaching the walls. Hall retired from the Navy in 1876 and lived on his family farm near Hansport, Nova Scotia. He is remembered as a national hero, with various memorials and commemorations in his honor all over Canada. Polish gentleman, Witold Pilecki. Witold Pilecki was a decorated army captain who famously volunteered to be sent to the Auschwitz concentration camp in 1940 to gather intelligence, organize resistance, and report on Nazi atrocities. He smuggled out critical material and set up an underground network inside the camp before making his getaway and participating in the Warsaw Uprising. In April 1943, Pilecki escaped Auschwitz and wrote Pilecki's Report, the first comprehensive and first-hand account of the death camp's atrocities given to the Allies. Pilecki suffered under terrible circumstances for more than 2.5 years while observing the horrors committed by the Nazis and compiling thorough reports on their mass murder. Today, he is hailed as a real hero for his unflinching bravery, selflessness, and moral rectitude in the face of overwhelming evil.